when measuring a length, I prefer to do it this way. So you take it from the inside of one side, and then you measure it a little bit over the edge on the other side. So if you notice, it's just on the ledge here. So for the inside of the rabbit on one side and the outside of that on the other, this is because we want to make the corners as snug as possible. So if we did it from the inside of the rabbit to the inside of the rabbit, there's a possibility, a very high chance, that we will cut it too short and it won't be snug. So we're going to take it from this length, and then we're going to cut it on the big chopper or on the smaller trim cutter for a more precise, fine cut. The other thing you could do is just, if you have like a piece, you could put it over to the edge. So I stick it over to the corner here where it would fit normally when it's in place, and then put a little line on the fillet itself, indicating where I need to cut it. There is another method that I was told about, but I can't seem to quite grasp it. You somehow take it this way, and then with an angle of a pin, you put it in. I don't know. I don't recommend doing it that way, but however you prefer to do it, whatever works for you. So now that I've cut the length to fit a little bit closer, I notice that it's over the edge slightly. So some people will use a trimmer, and sometimes I'll do this too to make sure that I cut it down. But what I usually do is I just make a little mark right here on the side. You're like, that is actually the corner of it. This one, if you notice, there is a bit of a gap that's between on the rabbit and the fillet. So we know that it's not going to be snug up against the side. But I still would prefer, instead of cutting it with the trimmer, to use the sander to cut it to fit. Perfectly into it. Over here at the sander, we know that it needs to be under this mark. So what I would do is change the position of this to go to this side. This is my favorite tool here, because if we have ones that are like circles or some kind of design here, we can switch the sides that needs to be shaved down to make it match. So sometimes I will shave it down so a circle on one side will match the circle of another side. So like how these don't really match, and it looks kind of weird. So it looks a little better when it's cut to match together a bit better. So on this one, we're just going to kind of push it in a little bit, not too much because you don't want to break it. I have actually broken one before by pushing it. But we're going to do a couple times. We know that it's going to be a bit, so I'm going to do like 4. Oops. Alright, so now we're just under that, and I'm going to go and test it and see how it fits. So I might have done it one too many times. Always better to go back and test it as many times as possible. So if you notice, it's snug over on this side, but over here it's a little bit over under it, and it wobbles back and forth. This might be corrected when we put in our tester fillet. So once I have the tester in there, you can see that it is a bit more snug and it will work. It is a little tiny bit too small, but you can hardly even notice it. You have to get a microscope. So hopefully the customer won't have a microscope. Alright, so over here at the sander, I always make sure that I turn on this little light so I have no shadows, because this is a very precise art here. Very precise. So, put my fillet in, look to see if I can see it, and then I'm just going to do 1/2 of a turn and blow it off the dust, and then I'm going to check it. So when I put it back in here, it actually looks like that was the perfect amount. And then when I do it again, if you notice, it matches up perfectly. Let's put this behind it so we can isolate it. So that's a perfect match. Now that we have it to size, you can make sure that it's nice and clean. There's like a little bit of gunk right here, so I'm going to take my blender. I'm just going to rub it on here to see if I can get that nice and clean. It's easier to clean the fillet before you stick it and tape it into the frame. Sometimes it needs water, sometimes those blenders will get it off. Every once in a while you need the unstick. That's a bit harsh though, so I wouldn't really recommend doing that. So sometimes it's a good idea to color the edges here. So this is what we would call a champagne color. It's a combination of gold and silver. We don't have champagne. We have gold that sometimes there's a bit of a silver, and a silver. So if you notice, it's more silver than gold. So I'm going to use the silver here and just do it on the edge. These pens are pretty expensive, I've been told. So I just want to use a little bit, but you want to do it on the edge. So in case it slips or there's some kind of, it doesn't quite match up, or there's like a little bit of gap, you want the silver to show through and not the brighter wood color. So we're going to do that on both sides. So I just do it like that. There are many different colors that we have at our disposal. So we have different silver ones, different wood color ones, different colors, and then these are like the ones that they use for in the chop and join. But these paint ones work excellent for the colored fillets, like these orange confetti kinds. We definitely don't for that because this one has a very bright white that will show through. Okay, this part, once we have all of the fillets in nice and snug and taped down, we are going to put on the aluminum tape. I recommend leaving a bunch of the backing out because it is much easier to take off the paper. And you're gonna like rip it, it's a hassle. So what I do is so you want to put the edge of it. I usually sit down to do this, so I can get closer to it. But you want to put the edge of the tape a little bit below the edge of the fillet, because you don't want the tape to be seen from the other side. So here you can see that it's just a little bit below the lip, so if you turn it over, you can't see the tape. And then you want to crease it. On the end, so we're creasing it, sticking it, creasing it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but. And then once we get to the end part, we'll just take the scissors, cut it, and then I'm gonna leave a little bit of the edge off of it. Sometimes, depending on how thick the frame is, you might want to take a razor and cut this off. This one, it doesn't go over it, so I'm just gonna stick it down. Now you want to do this with all of the sides. This is archival quality fillet tape too. It won't leave marks on the artwork or the mat that's touching it.